So we need then to recognize that it's the ungoverned mind that causes stress. We cannot govern or control what we don't understand. So we must come to some sort of understanding of what the mind is if we're going to effectively manage it. So these are the 4 aspects of the mind that we want to cover. We're only going to cover the first 2 in this session. In the next session we cover the next 2. Each one of these themselves can take an entire hour to discuss. So what I'm going to do is really just touch on them briefly to give an idea. If you want to dig more into these ideas, you can either ask questions at the end, or we can take up questions in the next session if you want to go further, or if you really are interested, contact me outside of this session. Contact me offline and we can get more into what these are. So this is really more about introducing an idea to you guys. So the first aspect of the mind we want to cover is likes and dislikes. So there's nothing wrong with likes and dislikes per se. I like chapati, I don't like rice. It's not good, it's not bad, there's nothing right or wrong about it, it's just the way that I'm built. I love warm, sunny weather, I don't like cold, windy weather. Reason not the need, says Shakespeare. You can't analyze why, it's just the nature of the mind. So likes and dislikes are not problematic. What's problematic is functioning on likes and dislikes. What does it mean to function on likes and dislikes? Reaction to likes and dislikes. What else? Making decisions based on them. Excellent. So that was one of the things we covered, that we make our choices based on mind and intellect. The other thing we covered was the way that we experience the world is dictated by the quality of our mind. So if we function on likes and dislikes, we also experience the world in a particular way. It's like a filter, like a color, like a colored filter that we put in front of our experiences, and everything that comes through gets that tint to it. So if I like chapati and I don't like rice, then I go to your home and you serve me rice. What's my relationship with that moment? Disappointed. I'm functioning on likes and dislikes rather than being thankful that someone's feeding me. The problem is that we make this conflation that if we like something, it's inherently good. If we don't like something, it must be bad. Where are we seeing this played out ad nauseum right now? In which domain of life do we see this being played out?
Politics.
Yeah, of course. I like my side of the aisle, therefore everything my candidate or my party says is right and good and true and beautiful, and everything your candidate says is wrong and ugly and false and harmful. I immediately make that sort of conflation because I'm functioning on my likes and dislikes. Same thing happens when it comes to our choices. I like sweets, so I choose the sweet. The problem, of course, is that what we like or dislike bears no necessary connection to our well-being. The diabetic likes sweets. It has zero connection to his well-being. The opiate addict likes opiates. So what we like has no necessary connection to what is in our best interests, to what will actually make us happy. So we have to find some method of disconnecting. This is what we get into in a bit more. So the first problem when it comes to functioning on likes and dislikes is that we experience disappointment. Go back to the very simple example that I gave earlier. I come to your house and you serve me rice. I'm expecting chapati, so what happens? There's a little disappointment there. This is a very simple, very minor sort of example, but you take it into larger things. You look at your children. I'm an engineer. I am an engineer. Right? I'm an engineer. And by hook or by crook, I expect my boy to be an engineer. Why? Well, because I'm an engineer. I have an expectation he will become an engineer. Now, what happens when he comes to me at the age of 15 and says, Dad, I've decided to go to dance school. I'm going to become a professional dancer. What happens within me? Disappointment, stress. What happens to our relationship? Strained. Because I'm expecting the world to conform to my likes and dislikes. I like it when the freeway's got no cars on it. What happens if I expect that to be the case? I should move out of California. So what we need to understand is that it is the mind that develops expectations because of our preferences, our likes and dislikes. So this becomes one of the ways that we can start to actually think about this. I don't expect chapati. I don't expect my son to follow my footsteps. It's my mind that does. There's a very important distinction to make. You take the aspect of the personality which has that quality and hold it at arm's length. So this is the first problem, that we experience a sense of disappointment when our expectations are unmet. That is stress. The more expectations we have, the more stress we will experience. If I have expectations of my kids, my spouse, my political system, my roads, my infrastructure, my schooling, my physical body, if I have expectations of all of these areas of life, every time I enter into that and the reality is different, I'll be stressed. And what do? I point at my body and say, bad body. I look at my son and say, bad son. I look at my political system and say, bad system. It's not the case. The boy's perfect. Leave him alone. He's exactly as he should be. Your body knows what to do. Leave it alone. Just listen to it. Stop telling it what to do. But this is not how we relate to things. We try to force our own mental pattern on the world. The world doesn't care what my mental pattern is. The universe does not care about my preferences. It will continue to march on as it sees fit, or as nature determines. Second aspect regarding likes and dislikes is that we will make choices that violate my definition of happiness. All right? So it's important that we remember it's your own definition of happiness that is being violated when we function on likes and dislikes, not anybody else's. So this philosophy is not saying you ought to function in this way because I say so. This philosophy is saying, I know where you want to go, and this is the way to get there. So imagine I say to you, I want to get to San Francisco. I'm going to get on the 5 and travel south. What would you say to me? It's the wrong way. Get on the 5 and travel north. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me how to live my life. You're not. You're not telling me how to live my life. You're not telling me what to do. I have stated I want to go to San Francisco. You're helping me along. Where do you want to get to? All of you. Where do you all of us, I should say. Where do all of us want to get to?
Happiness.
Permanent, unbroken satisfaction. Vedanta is simply saying, you want to get to San Francisco? Travel north. This is all it's saying. It recognizes that we want that satisfaction. It's giving us the method to get there. So it says, when we make choices based purely on preferences, we have no logical connection to what will bring us well-being. Satisfaction, well-being, happiness is an effect. We have to put the right causes in. Choosing on likes and dislikes is not the right cause. All right, so this is the first problem with likes and dislikes. First two problems with likes and dislikes, that we experience disappointment because likes and dislikes generate expectations, and we make choices that take us away from where we want to go. I really like the 5 South. The 5 North is a terrible, terrible road. It's a lovely road, that 5 South, so I'm going to travel on that. It's nonsensical. And yet this is how we're functioning on a daily basis. The only difference is that we don't necessarily know it because we've conflated, I like it, therefore it's good. Incidentally, you see this very, very clearly in very young children. Put Brussels sprouts in front of a 3-year-old. Meh. There's an immediate rejection of that plate because she does not like it. This is exactly how our mind functions as adults. It does the exact same thing. You present me with something I don't like, my mind says, meh, take it away, I don't want it. The difference is, of course, that I have a bit of social maturity, so I can put a veneer of politeness over it. Oh, thank you, I've already eaten. But internally, it's the same phenomenon, whether I'm 3 years old, 30 years old, or 90 years old. The mind is the mind. So, sounds pretty pessimistic, but I wouldn't be here if there wasn't a solution. Fundamentally, and you're going to hopefully get sick of hearing me say this, because if you get sick of hearing me say it, it means you've heard it enough times. What we need to do is to develop and apply the intellect. It is the intellect which has the capacity to manage the mind. The example we often use is parent and child. Let's say you have a 10-year-old at home, a couple of 10-year-olds, and you decide, I'm off to Vegas for 3 days. And so you leave the kids at home. You come back on Sunday night. What do you come back to? Chaos, a messy house, missing children, and of course, a pair of handcuffs. Because you can't do that. It's illegal. Why is it illegal? Because we know that children are not qualified to run a household. They're not qualified to manage their own lives. Despite the fact that we recognize my 10-year-old son as an autonomous being, I can't let him manage his own life. It's abdicating my responsibility as a parent. In the same way, your mind has these beautiful qualities. It has these wonderful aspects to it, but it's not qualified to run your life. It's qualified for certain other things that the body and the intellect cannot do, but it's not qualified to run your life. That job falls to the intellect. So the mind in us is like a child. The intellect in us is like the adult, which has the capacity to manage it. The development of the intellect is a long-term goal. It proceeds via questioning. Simple analogy, if you want to build your biceps, what do? Lift weights. Add some resistance and use the muscle, right? If you want to build your intellect, it's very much the same thing. Use that muscle for its purpose. The basic function of the intellect is to question. We have to question everything. That builds the intellect. And we can go into a lot more detail into the actual daily practices of that. We'll just touch on it here. That's enough. Fundamentally, when we have applied the intellect and we are questioning, what we're doing is asking ourselves, what am I doing and why am I doing it? I am reaching for a sweet. Why am I reaching for a sweet? Because I like it. The moment you say that to yourself, you have brought into your awareness what your purpose is and where you are going in that particular moment. What am I doing? Eating a sweet. Why? Because I like it. If you're a diabetic, that's sufficient because you know everything about diabetes more than anybody else does. The problem is that we don't tend to question what we are doing. What do we do instead? We allow the mind's impulses to simply dictate actions for us. So this ability in us to disconnect from likes and dislikes is the intellect. So this is what we need to do, is to disconnect from our preferences. In a sense, disconnect from our minds. We need to get out of our minds, as it were, lose your mind. So this disconnection from the mind is not a suppression of the mind. It's not stifling the mind. We're not telling it to go away. We're not telling it to be quiet. All this is detrimental to our emotional well-being. What we need to do when we are managing the mind and asking these questions is to redirect it. All right? Think about a flow of water through a pipe. A better example actually is gas, but we'll stay with water, never mind. And the pipe has an open end, and you don't want it to leak out, so what do? You jam your hand over the edge of it. This is not a successful way to manage the flow because you get the back pressure all the way through the system. What's a much better way? Add another length of pipe, add a U-bend, more pipe, and take the fluid where it will be useful. It's water. Okay, take it back to your water recirculation system. Don't let it drain out onto the floor. This is the analogy for our own minds. I really, really like such and such, but I know I shouldn't because of my preferences and so on and so forth. Instead of just saying no, this is a suppression. What happens when we suppress these sorts of tendencies and urges?
Build up.
They build up and
Goes to subconscious levels.
goes to subconscious, and where it goes there, it metastasizes or pathologizes and comes out at some point. The mind always collects on its debts. The body always collects on its debts. At some point it will come out, and if we've been suppressing for long enough and badly enough, it comes out in a twisted, pathologized form. Again, unfortunately, where are we seeing this played out? Look at the Catholic Church scandal. One of the reasons this is so problematic is because priests are not allowed to engage in normal, healthy sexual behavior. If you're a priest, you have to be celibate. Okay, now the number of people on this planet who can successfully manage being without any kind of sexual outlet, especially when you are young and healthy, is minuscule. Very, very small number of people. And yet we are asking everybody who enters into the church to be celibate. It's absurd. And so that natural, healthy, beautiful desire gets suppressed and turns into something terrible and comes out in all these negative ways. So we must not suppress the essence of successfully controlling or guiding the mind is to redirect it somewhere else. And that brings us to the next point. We take it to an ideal. So the first question we ask is, what am I doing and why am I doing it? There we must give ourselves a very truthful, honest answer. I'm doing this because I want to look good in front of my friends. All right, it's a little shallow and egocentric, but hey, who cares? At least I'm being honest with myself, hey? I'm not lying to myself or anybody else. I'm virtue signaling. I want everyone to think what a good guy I am. When we talk about pursuing an ideal, you could say, oh, very well, okay, that's the reason that my mind wants to do it. But now we ask the question, is there a reason that I can do this that does not serve my selfish, egocentric interests? Right, simple example. Here I am talking about this knowledge. Why am I doing it? Why am I doing it? To help you guys, ostensibly. But internally, I could be doing this because I just like having 20 pairs of eyes looking at me. I just like having 20 pairs of ears listen to me. I'm a bit of a show-off. I'm getting something purely egocentric out of this. Okay, I know I've got this temperament. I know I have these funny little desires. Okay, just gently push those aside and say, but is there an ideal outside of my selfish interests that I can place my attention on? Of course there is. You gave it. Helping people. This knowledge helps people tremendously. The ability to disconnect, for example, from likes and dislikes and achieve greater mental peace, enhanced relationships, it improves people's lives. So now when I perform the very same action, instead of thinking, you guys are all looking at me, okay, a couple asleep in the back, never mind. Instead of thinking about that, I think about what can I do to serve and to help my fellow human beings. When I pursue an ideal, what's happening is that I am circumventing, I'm short-circuiting or getting around the selfish tendency of the mind, which is to want to get something out of it. This is how we circumvent the likes and dislikes. I really like the road being this way. I really want my son to be an engineer. Whose well-being am I thinking of when I say that? Certainly not my son's, because he's a dancer. He can't do calculus to save his life. He's always been bad at maths. He's dyslexic. He can hardly read a page without having to go back twice. I don't know much about dyslexia, so I'm making things up. So it's impossible that he would be an engineer. If I have an expectation that he's an engineer, I get frustrated. It's my desire for him to be an engineer. It's my selfishness, in a sense. I'm not thinking about what's best for him. I just want him to follow my footsteps. The moment I say, what is in my son's best interests? Aha. There I've taken it from being selfish to being unselfish. My selfishness has been circumvented. So my preference that he become an engineer, that gets put to the side. In the same way that when the diabetic says, even though I like sweets, they're bad for me, he is gently putting aside his preference for sweets. This is exactly what we need to do. But we need intellectual strength in order to do it. Because if the preference is very strong, it will overpower the intellect and there's nothing we can do. So we need to build the intellectual strength and then use it to pursue an ideal. A goal that lies outside selfish demands. Third aspect, and this is more of a short-term fix, because this first fix of developing the intellect, this takes a fairly extended period of time. It's a gradual ramp up. So we need something that we can do right now, right here, to try and at least temporarily give some relief from the persecution of our likes and dislikes, if you want to put it that way. And that is to make a correct assessment of the environment so that we can accept it. We often hear people say, you must accept the way things are. This is great advice, but how do you do it? Next time you're upset and someone says you need to accept it, say, fantastic, thank you, please tell me how to accept it. I just flick the acceptance switch in the back of my head? No. What do you actually do to get yourself to a point of acceptance? We make a correct assessment. Simple analogy. You're driving along one of the freeways here and there's a big orange sign on the side of the road that says road work ahead, expect delays. Why have they gone to the trouble, the time, the effort, the money, the human hours to put that sign up? Because the road work's there anyway, you're going to hit it. Why are they telling you 5 minutes in advance?
Take a detour? Yeah.
You can take a detour if you have to. What else?
Slow down.
Slow down? Well, you're going to slow down anyway. As soon as you see the roadworks, you'll naturally slow down.
Start preparing to accept.
Exactly. They are managing your expectations as a driver. Because if you weren't expecting roadworks, the moment you hit it, it's like, oh, are you kidding me? If you've been told 5 minutes earlier, it's like, yeah, there it is. What's the difference in those experiences? One is far less angst-ridden than the other. How has this been achieved? By putting a sign up. Roadworks ahead, expect delays. I expect my husband to be sensitive and understanding of my needs. I should have a big orange sign in the front of my house. Caution, insensitive husband ahead. And when I've had such a terrible day. Yeah, me too. Grab me a beer. Well, at least I'm in the right house, you know. No, I'm in the right house because this is how my husband functions. So what we're saying here is that to develop an acceptance of something, we must first of all make a very clear assessment of its qualities, its properties, and its functions. And then we will know it's functioning exactly as I expected it to. We are, instead of having a wrong expectation, we have an accurate expectation so we don't get that same shock. Related to this is gratitude. And this is again something that we can implement as a practice on a daily or a weekly basis, whatever works for your temperament. Whether I know it or not, I am getting a benefit just from being in the same house as my spouse, as my wife. I may not consciously recognize it, but the very fact that there's another human being that lives with me, I get a sense of comfort. I get a sense of community. No, if you're a bad person in society, what do they do with you? Put you in prison. If you're a bad person in prison, what do they do with you? Solitary confinement. To be alone, to be without other human contact is not just a punishing experience, it's a terrible experience. The very fact that I have other human beings around me, I am getting something from that. I don't recognize that I have this benefit, and so I say to my partner, to my kids, to everything else, these are my expectations of you. The moment I stop and start to look for some things in my life that I'm grateful for, the moment I have that shift in my feelings. Yeah, she can be very annoying, but I am grateful that she's in my life. Then when she does something annoying, how do I relate to it? It's my wife. I'm also not perfect. So when we have gratitude, we cannot at the same time experience give me. It's not possible. You can't simultaneously hold these two feelings. You're either thankful you have something or you are demanding more, a sense of entitlement. So correctly assessing our environment and being grateful for what it provides. I heard someone recently that they were discussing capitalism and how we should crush capitalism. I said, how did you get here today? I drove. Oh yeah? How did you get your car? I bought it. Immediately he understood what I was getting at. The benefits of capitalism are all around us. We enjoy them constantly and we don't know it. But what do? We look at the negative side of the capitalist system and say capitalism is bad because of these bad things, without recognizing all of the beautiful things that it has brought us. Nothing in this world is all good or all bad. If you start to look for the good, it offsets our relationship to the bad. This is gratitude. All right, so this is the first aspect, likes and dislikes. A lot of content there. And this, as I say, is only not even all of it. This is just touching on it. Any questions on the aspect of likes and dislikes before we move on to the next?
So the mind's power is so strong. And I know you said pursue an ideal outside of that, right? Do you have any more examples as far as on a day-to-day basis practices?
So what we suggest is whatever time you normally get up in the morning, most people can squeeze out maybe 30 to 45 minutes worth of slack time. A good example is someone told me this recently. He said he gets up and one of the first things he does is he checks his Facebook and his emails and whatnot, right? Spends 20 minutes doing that. He said, I don't need to check my Facebook first thing in the morning. I can do it when I get to work. He does. Hey, come on, we're all doing it. So he says, okay, that 20 minutes I won't spend in the morning and maybe extra time doing other things. So you take that 20 minutes and you wake up, say, 30 or 45 minutes earlier than usual. Take a book that is philosophical in its content. It doesn't matter what you read. I can give you recommendations, but really as long as it's a philosophical text, it doesn't matter what it is. And just start to question everything that's in that book. I'm going to run well over time, but this is a great example. Our teacher, his teacher is a fellow by the name of Swami Chinmayananda. I'm sure you're familiar, some of you. Chinmayananda, anyone know what his original occupation was? A journalist. How did he become, from Menon, the journalist, how did he become Swami Chinmayananda?
He went to actually pull their bluff, right?
Exactly.
Bluff, yeah.
He decided all these pseudo-gurus or these fake swamis, I'm going to go and expose them. So off he went to the Himalayas, went to the Tapovanam ashram, sat down there and said, right, go on then, give me your best. And I'm going to prove you wrong. And he used all of his journalistic skills and rational inquiry and questioning. What happened as he tried to prove Tapovanam wrong? He recognized, my God, it's right. This is probably the best example of study that I can think of. Because when we study, we're already committed to believing what's in front of us. We've already drunk the Kool-Aid, as it were. This guy, he was actively trying to disprove. It shows the sincerity and the honesty of his inquiry that he was able to say, well, the guy's right. And he was transformed as a result. This is the sort of attitude in our study that we want to conduct. We're not just reading to get information. We are reading to figure out whether or not what's written is actually true and useful. That is the development of the intellect. That's the path of knowledge. This is something we can do every day. The gratitude practice. This is something you can do as often as suits you. I wouldn't recommend doing this too much because it can start to become perfunctory and mechanical. You sort of, I've got 20 minutes, I'll do my gratitude practice. I go down my laundry list of things I know I should be grateful for and tick them all off, and nothing happens. So the daily practices of study, a gratitude practice, and the path of action, being unselfish, this is a daily practice that you can do only while you are awake. So while you are awake, you can do your path of action. You can't do it while you're dreaming, and you can't do it while you're in deep sleep. But the rest of the time, right now, you can be doing karma yoga. What can I offer this environment? Well, I can make sure my cell phone's off. No offense. I can listen, or if I'm not listening, I can at least not make so much noise to disturb others, whatever it happens to be. And if the answer to the question, what can I offer this environment, is nothing, fine, then it's nothing. We should not be so arrogant to presume, here I am, I can help every environment because I'm so good. No, there are some environments where I'm useless and I can't do anything, but that doesn't matter. What's important is whether or not we ask the question. Is there anything I can do for you? No, I'm fine, thank you. But it shows my intent to serve. So these are the practices that we can do on a daily basis.
What about the meditation?
So it depends what you mean by the word meditation. When we use the word meditation in our particular tradition, it means something very specific. And it means something that I am guessing no person in this room is capable of achieving. No person in this hotel is capable of achieving, including the speaker. Meditation, when we discuss it, is to maintain a single pointed focus on a thought to the exclusion of all other thoughts. So if you're focusing on the breath, for example, inhale, exhale, there's two thoughts, so that's not meditation. If you're focusing on a flower and gradually pulling one petal, that's not one thought. So it depends what you mean by the word meditation. So if you mean meditation to mean some sort of mental practice where you take your attention off all of this external, worldly, noisy stuff for 20 minutes and just place it somewhere internally that is a little bit quieter, if you find that helps you, fantastic, do it. The only caveat that I often discuss when we talk about meditation is to say that it is very, very easy for us to become attached to our meditation. We become attached to the practice, we become attached to some of the effects, and we become attached to ourselves as a meditator. Anyone does transcendental meditation here or has done? Many years ago I started doing TM, and when I was investigating it, I was told this is the Rolls Royce of meditation. Why do I care if it's a Rolls Royce or a Fiat? Because it's, you've got to have the best, right? So I become attached to myself as a meditator. The whole purpose of meditation is lost the moment I get attached to these things. So if you have a breath practice, for example, or a pranayama, if you find that sort of thing helps you with your general mental management, do it. The only thing, again, I'll repeat myself, don't think that the external practices are making internal changes. They're not. They're just temporarily suspending some of the effects.